Yangyang is back, and her long-awaited return was worth it, arriving as the debut banner of Meng Zhou in Wuthering Waves 3.5, fully equipped with her absurd animations, 2 unique stances, and massive amounts of Havoc Bane-fueled damage. Her kit, however, naturally comes with some restrictions that will greatly limit her potential on release, but with future units like Sui Sui on the horizon, who she'll undoubtedly work with fantastically well, you can expect her to only get better with time. As a Havoc, heavy attack, and negative status unit with massive self-crit buffs, she'll work best alongside units like Chisa, Verena, Lene, and Rebecca. With that, welcome to our full-scope, comprehensive guide to Yangyang Xuanling, one of the newest additions to Wuthering Waves, and I'm here to break down everything when it comes to how she works, what her best equipment will be, and the steps you need to take across her team building and rotations to make the most out of her insane damage potential. As always, if you're enjoying this content, please hit that like and subscribe button. Yangyang, with her baseline kit, focuses on the generation and consumption of Melody to generate another resource called Azure Plumes, which allow her to deliver devastating enhanced heavy attacks across her 2 unique stances. Naturally, an explanation of Melody is where we'll begin. Melody begins maxed out and is consumed through a variety of actions to enhance Yangyang's attacks. The first is through her basic attacks. She's got 2 sets because of her 2 unique stances. Yangyang begins the battle in the Azure stance, which has a simple 4-hit attack chain that applies 1 stack of Havoc Bane on the final hit. While this attack consumes Melody, it also generates 20% additional ER. Her mid-air attack is a plunge that can chain into the second stage of her basic, while her dodge counter simply performs the second stage of her basic and can chain into her third. Pressing her resonance skill button in Azure stance allows her to switch to Feather, which has different animations but functions nearly identically with its normal attacks, a 4-hit attack chain, Havoc Bane application, increased ER, and similar advancements from plunges and dodge counters. The last method of consuming Melody is simply with her Resonance Liberation, which consumes all Melody, delivers a massive burst of heavy attack damage, and also generates an Azure Plume. She also gains a special buff called Shadow Xuanling, which is activated by generating Azure Plumes with abilities other than her Liberation. When this occurs, it'll trigger a follow-up attack that deals additional heavy attack damage. And these abilities, they're made available when Yangyang has 0 Melody. While in Azure stance, she can use her enhanced resonance skill, Sword Stance Flow Feather, which deals heavy attack damage, restores 100 points of Melody, and also generates 1 Azure Plume while consuming a stack of Havoc Bane. Her basic attack chain isn't reset after using this attack, and if it's interrupted, a Wraith dealing fixed Havoc damage will continue her attack. Dodges during this time will also consume 50 Melody. Likewise, in Feather stance, she gains access to Sword Stance Flow Azure. This similarly deals heavy attack damage and has the same restoring and consumption effects on resources and negative statuses, with the same Wraith and dodge mechanic as well. The last method of generating Azure Plume is simply with her intro skill, which applies 1 stack of Havoc Bane and also generates 1 Azure Plume. This, however, won't trigger the Shadow of Xuanling. Building up these Azure Plumes are important because at max stacks, Yangyang gains access to enhanced heavy attacks across both her forms. She can hold up to 2 points of Azure Plume. In Azure stance, this heavy attack generates a massive cyclone and buffs the attack with 160% additional crit damage. This buff lasts for 25 seconds, and the attack also inflicts 2 stacks of Havoc Bane. In Feather stance, on the other hand, if on the ground, she attacks the target in the air and automatically casts a plunge attack, which can be followed up with her Havoc and Bloom attack chain. She gains 160% additional crit damage during all of these attacks, and that buff is removed after the final hit of Havoc and Bloom. This buff has a pretty big cooldown as well, and both of these attack chains consume all Azure Plume. However, that isn't it when it comes to Yangyang's kit. She also gains some incredible buffs from Havoc Bane stacks on enemies as well. Every time teammates apply Havoc Bane to a target, she gains a stack of Feathered Oath for 4 seconds, stacking up to 6 times once a second. Each stack increases the critical damage of all of her enhanced heavy attack chains by 25%, up to 150. Her first inherent also gives her damage amplification depending on the number of Havoc Bane stacks on the enemy. For stacks 1 to 3, each stack grants her 10%, or up to 30. And for stacks 3 to 6, which can only be accessed with Chisa on release, she gains 12%, up to 36. That's a lot of built-in damage amp, 66%. Her second inherent skill also greatly increases Havoc Bane uptime, causing her Liberation to instantly inflict the maximum number of stacks on target's hit, while also granting her a stack of Windbound every time teammates inflict Havoc Bane, with 6 stacks up to 1 per second. At max stacks, they're removed and she gains 1 with the wind. This causes Yangyang's enhanced skills to summon birds to attack enemies that will apply 6 stacks of Havoc Bane to the target. And when it comes to Tomb Break, she doesn't interact with it at all. That's a big kit, and when you factor in how all of it works together, she has a somewhat complex playstyle that involves intro skilling in, consuming Melody to fuel her first stance switch, while following up with her first enhanced heavy attack, consuming all of her plumes. Then she'll Liberation to consume Melody and regenerate her plumes, and then stance switch again, keeping track of the unique buffs in each stance before delivering another enhanced heavy attack and then outro skilling to another teammate, delivering a burst of damage to enemies while also granting the entire team tonal switch, which makes it so that when Resonators inflict Havoc Havoc Bane with this buff, their Havoc damage is amplified by 20%, lasting 20 seconds without expiring on swap. Overall, Yangyang is a unit that comes equipped with some of the biggest buffs in the game, just so long as she has someone that can raise Havoc Bane's stack limit to 6, making Chisa the only real option at release to grant her buffs. However, it's pretty clear that given Sui's role as a healer and their likely synergy with each other, that you'll have more options in the future. Otherwise, she functions well with units that can buff her attack and heavy attack damage, giving her a wide number of premium options like Rebecca, who's actually free, or Lene, while also giving free-to-play wonders like Verena a lot of staying power. When it comes to building Yangyang, starting off with her skill priority, you'll want to max out her Forte and her Liberation, as they consist of nearly all her damage. Then you'll prioritize her basics, but don't bother leveling up her skill or intro too much to save on weekly boss mats. Moving on to her weapons, Yangyang has only 3 weapons to consider, and they're all 5 stars. Here's what the calculations are looking like, credits to Pride One. Let's start off with her signature, Azure Oath. This weapon provides 12% attribute damage, a standard 587 attack and 24.3% crit rate, a massive 36% heavy attack amp, and 12% defense ignore when Havoc Bane is inflicted, which Yangyang does all the time. This weapon is clearly tailor-made for her and adds to her self-amplification, but doesn't have a lot of built-in attack percent, so make sure you find it in your Echo builds. The next best option here is another limited units weapon, Emerald Sentence. This weapon has 12% attack, the same crit and damage, but instead gains 30% heavy attack damage when an Echo skill is used after an intro or basic. Yangyang can easily maintain uptime on one part of this effect, and she can also provide a nice Echo damage buff to the entire team as well. The second best choice. And the third option, and the only one you should consider outside of the previous two, is the standard 5-star Emerald of Genesis. This weapon has the same base stats as the previous weapons, ER instead of attack, and a stacking attack buff that Yangyang can easily maintain. It's also completely free and selectable from so many places, you have to have one by now. No other weapon option should really be considered when Emerald of Genesis exists, so go for that if you're not going for her signature. Now it's time to talk about Yangyang's Echoes, and it's an easy choice to make here. Song of Feathered Trace provides ER on its 2-piece and massive buffs to crit rate and heavy damage if the user applies Havoc Bane, which works perfectly with Yangyang's kit. For her main stats, you'll want a crit damage 4 cost, 1 Havoc and 1 attack 3 costs, and 2 attack 1 costs. Running double Havoc is fine as well for her 3 costs. For her substats, you want crit rate, damage, ER up to 120%, attack, and heavy attack damage rolls. Virtually no other damage rolls beneficial for her kits, so don't go looking for them. Now that we've covered everything you can grind in-game, it's time to talk about the part that involves your wallet. Sequence nodes. Credits to Pridewin for calculating the damage increase per node. Yangyang's S1 causes her enhanced skills to trigger a follow-up heavy attack equal to around 340% of her attack. The attack itself will also stagnate enemies. She also gains interruption immunity during her enhanced heavy attacks. Her second node causes all of her enhanced heavy attack chains to deal 100% more damage, and then when out of combat for over 4 seconds, she gains strung notes. This causes her next basic attack to trigger a follow-up Shadow of Xuanling that deals identical damage to the other attacks. She also restores 2 Azure Plumes and resets all of the cooldowns on her self buffs for her enhanced heavy attacks. Her S3 amplifies her Liberation's damage by 175%, while also causing her intro skill and enhanced skills to increase the stack limit of Havoc Bane around her targets by 3 for 20 seconds, without stacking with other increases. This removes all of her reliance on Chisa and other stack limit increasers. She also applied 1 extra stack of Havoc Bane with the 4th hit of her basics and her enhanced heavy attacks. S4 causes her intro skill and stance switches to grant the entire team 20% attack for 20 seconds, while her S5 causes her to recover 50% of her HP and become immune for 3 seconds after taking a fatal blow. And her S6, the big one, causes her to gain Void Flux for 30 seconds when she applies Havoc Bane, increasing all of her heavy attack damage by 40%. This is the only damage type she really deals. She also gains Still as Withered Wood after using an enhanced skill. This causes her to summon a Shadow of Xuanling to attack whenever any negative status is applied to the enemy. It's guaranteed to crit and considered heavy attack damage. This shadow can be summoned once a second and up to 5 times, and has a cooldown of 25 seconds. That's all for the sequence nodes. Now that we've covered everything regarding Yangyang's build, let's talk about her teams and optimal rotations. Unfortunately, given her lack of Havoc Bane enablers, Yangyang's teams on release will be centered around Chisa and other general supports, alongside heavy attack or general buffers like Rebecca or Lene. Our first team features Chisa as the support, Rebecca as the sub DPS, and Yangyang as the main DPS. You'll start off this team on Chisa, skill, and then basic attack, and then echo skill, before following up with her liberation and then basic attacks until her big scissor chop. Then you'll enhance skill to enter chainsaw mode and repeat basic attacks until her concerto is filled and she leaps into the air. Then you'll outro skill to Rebecca, who will basic attack 3 times in guts, then skill to switch to Huntress, and then basic attack 2 more times before using her enhanced heavy attack. Then you'll Liberation, fire every single shot, and then outro to Yangyang. Yangyang will then basic attack 4 times in Azure stance, enhance skill to switch to Feather stance, and then use her first enhanced heavy attack, following up with the entire Havoc and Bloom attack chain, and then you'll use her Liberation. Then you'll enhance skill to switch to Azure stance, enhanced heavy attack, then outro to Chisa afterwards. On this team's second rotation, you'll be able to skip the 2 basics following Rebecca's stance switch to Huntress mode, allowing for faster rotations from your second rotation onward. This team makes ample use of Rebecca's fantastic attack buffs, especially if she's on Static Mist in Moonlit Clouds, and when she's a completely free-to-play unit as long as you play during 3.4 Cyberpunk collab, you can get a ton of mileage out of this team. On the other hand, you can simply swap in Lene for Rebecca for a much simpler and nearly as effective team composition. In this team, everything will be identical aside from the sub DPS rotation, where you'll simply intro skill in on Lene from Chisa, skill and then Liberation and then charge her heavy attack and then echo skill. Then you'll connect, jump 3 times and then plunge attack before outroing to Yangyang. This team focuses more on Lene's general damage buffs and easily clears content as well. Other sub DPS recommendations include Yuno, Mortefi, and Frolova, but they aren't generally recommended as their buffs are lower or their rotation time is significantly longer than other units, but feel free to experiment to see what works for you. On the other hand, if you're looking for the most budget of all budget teams, Yangyang also works very well with Verena, and that free-to-play 5-star support actually outperforms Shorekeeper due to Yangyang's built-in crit buffs. For this team, we'll run Verena as the support, Mortefi as the sub DPS, and Yangyang as the DPS. You'll start off on any character that isn't Verena, then swap to her immediately as combat begins, and then basic attack until she generates a Forte stack. Then you'll skill, Liberation, and then jump into the air and air attack until her concerto is filled, then echo skill and swap to Mortefi. Mortefi will then skill, basic until his Forte is filled, enhance skill, and then Liberation, and then more basics until full concerto, followed by an echo skill and outro to Yangyang. Yangyang will then perform the identical rotation listed before, and will outro to Mortefi at the end of her rotation so that you can immediately regular swap back to Verena and restart the rotation. This team isn't nearly as good as those with built-in Havoc Bane stack increases, but still does incredibly well due to Yangyang's impressive self-buffs. An incredible free-to-play option, especially when you can use Emerald to Genesis to decent effect. This is a great starter comp new players can upgrade from by picking up units like Suisui in the future. When it comes to quick swap, Yangyang has very few partners to actively share the field with that aren't griefing her damage, so it's likely we'll see this explored more in the near future with more Megjo releases. At the end of the day, Yangyang easily sets a new standard for DPS units in Wuthering Waves due to her incredible scaling and incredibly complex moveset that actively switches between 2 forms to maximize her damage. However, she remains closely tied to other specialized units to reach that damage potential. Fortunately, her scaling with heavy attacks allows her access to some of the widest range of supports on the roster, including several incredible free-to-play options like Rebecca and Mortefi. And her performance without tailored Havoc Bane supports and stack limit increasers like Chisa is still very impressive for any player who isn't as invested into the game. She's an incredible release that will likely age much better with better partners in 3.5 and beyond, but also remains entirely skippable so long as you have a unit like Frolova. But it's also very clear that there are very few Havoc DPS units in the game, so picking up Yangyang is a foolproof way of future-proofing your current roster. Is she a must-pull? If she isn't, she's very close. As always, if you enjoyed this content, please hit that like and subscribe button. Peace out.